Now, ministers have been speaking on the outcome of the three-day retreat by the Federal Executive Council. Key recommendations, as outlined by the Secretary of the Government of the Federation, George Akume, encompass administrative reforms, AI prioritization, performance bonds for civil servants, and improved information flow.
There are specifics that were dealt with while this retreat has been going on in terms of service delivery, ways and means, how to get things done according to the rules and guidelines submitted to all ministers and ministries. So I would say on a whole, it's been eye-opening.
As far as I'm concerned, they have started making a lot of difference. Number one thing is that the relationship between the Minister for State and then the main minister, and of course relationship between us and then the permanent secretary and what the role they should play. That's having been settled. And of course the mandate of each ministry is interwoven with other, basically because all the ministries have to follow the 8-point agenda of Mr. President, meaning that yes, you want something, but what you want may not be what will bring the realization and the completion of 8-point agenda in the next 4 years. And so for me, it's very good and it's timely.
We know who the president is. He will never say what he doesn't mean. So when he says, if you don't perform, you go, I want to believe he means that. So it's a wake-up call for all of us to never rest on our oars, to know fully well that the targets are high, the bars are high, and the expectation of Nigerians are pretty high. So we must roll up our sleeves, get back to work, make it less of words, but more of actions, and deliver on the renewed hope agenda of Mr. President.
Have in the studio Dr. Sam Amadi to look at how President Bola Tinubu will manage many of his ministers who are mostly ambitious politicians to achieve its development agenda. What should the president do to ensure efficient management of his cabinet? That seems to be my very first question to you, Dr. Sam Amadi. All right, as analyst, thank you very much indeed for coming to Newsnight. So you heard it right there. So what should the president do to ensure the effective management of his ministers?
Well, I think, first is the fact that, like the minister said, they probably now know the relationship between Minister of State and Minister, and also between the PAMSEC. Many of the ministers, some of them who are politicians actually, who are governors,
right,
have been as chief executives. So where there's no distance, the difference between the chief accounting officer, the chief executive officer, and so on and so forth. Now they're going to see under the public service rules there are some, limitations. Things you have to do, public service rules, financial guidelines, all that. That's on the procedural side of it. But I think the big challenge for the president will be, look, the president has, if you look at the main ministries that are in charge of development, finance, if you look at others like maybe power, look at investment and all that. It's called that so many works, see so many politicians are ministers. And you look at the agencies, the president has also lined up non-politicians, some of them technocrats, young persons, persons of ideas, to drive some of these parasata, key developmental agencies. There's a theory we call separating rowing from steering, with the rower and the steering. The person steers, the other person rows. So the person who steers is like the pathfinder, is the policy. And the person who steers is like the operational, the tactical. So you need to find a way to focus, authorize line agencies. The key drivers of development actually are those, for example, the central bank is arguably maybe more important than the Minister of Finance in terms of impact, okay? Yeah. NEC, Electricity Regulatory Commission, it's more consequential in its decisions probably than the Minister of Power. So how do you create that strategy, engagement that you authorize, protect, enable the technocrats in some of these line agencies to operate without being overshadowed and subjugated by the minister? So if you have political ministers, so you might be for political cover, but you have agencies who are technocrats. So the first trick is, how do you empower these guys to drive the engine without roiling the politicians who will come after them, and how do you protect them? Obasanjo had a bit of that. So
let me come in right there. Let me come right there, Dr. Amadi.
Yeah.
You see, what you're suggesting now is that we have like two level playing fields, or two parallel portfolios or portfolio classes. You know, some political ministers, while some are doing the dirty job, quote unquote, you know, the real job. You know, but then remember that you're as strong as your weakest link. So wouldn't that, I mean, creating a separate playing field for the political ministers, wouldn't that be pressuring those who are doing the real job? I mean, what do you make of that?
So look at it this way. There are no perfect words, okay? It's managerial strategic approach. You have minister who probably is politician. And so he's come to the ministries because of maybe affinity, political support, whatever. And you've put these smart, brilliant, go-getter technocrat to drive the ministry. Now, decoupling, rowing and steering. You see, in policy and development, you discover that there are agencies that you need to unlock, give them independence. That's what they call independent commission to drive development. But at the same time, you want to make sure that the ministers who themselves are politicians, whose priorities inevitably will be some bit political, do not hamstring them, do not contain them, restrain them, and constrain them. And so I gave an example of Obasanjo, for example. You see, the RBs, the Aerofires also, who was in a BPE, and other drivers, we actually enabled as ministerial, as agency level to drive. They used to come into conflict with ministers whose instinct, being politicians, would be to aggrandize power, okay? When I was also in the NEC, you know, I used to have issues with the ministers, because ministers want to control, but oftentimes they may not be well competent enough, or even, you know, skilled to drive the technical side of work. So that's the first independent model. The second thing is, you see, and somebody mentioned, one of the ministers talked about it, coherence is critical between different layers of government.
Coherence is critical. You carry on. Hold your thought just before it leaves me. Now, I understand where you're coming from. So when the ministers that are the technocrats are doing the job, what will the political ministers be doing?
Yeah, that's what it's steering. They are giving government direction. You see, the minister's work actually is policy oriented. So it's not like they are lazy out there, but they are not being allowed to over-constrain the implementers of government policy. The agencies that have statutory mandate to think out those policies. So for example, if we're in the energy sector, for example, the minister has a clear work to do under the Electricity Act, which is policy direction. But at the same time, the guys who do the data analysis for tariff making, for regulations to drive up investment, are the regulator. So you wouldn't like to have a minister who constrain them. That's number one. The other thing that the president has to do right away is, you just don't think in terms of it was sloganeering renewed hope, renewed hope. What we've learned from development across the world, Asia, Europe, everywhere, is there must be a sense in which there is a one government development agenda. Now, you have to articulate in big frame what government wants to achieve. Again, there must be coherence, that each part is pulling the same way. The other issues, watch out. Minister of Budget and National Planning, and the Minister for Finance coordinating the economy. One of the problems why we don't have redevelopment is that we think around the economy as finance. So there's a growing financialization because of the rise and the power of financial sector, you know, the banks, the financial giants. So we overlook the other work of alignment, of construction, of economic development. So I want to see how the president can clearly, you know, create that synergy between the Minister for National Planning, which is traditional role for planning the economy, and Minister of Finance, who now doubles as connecting Minister of the Economy. So if you don't street together, we will go back to the same pattern, what I call financializing economics. So you end up financial bubble, but you are not really transforming the fundamentals of economic development.
Saudi Africa Summit, Arab Africa Summit, 10th and 11th of November, the president will be attending. He hopes to woo investors yet again. What do you make of that? What are Nigeria's chances anyway?
First, all this, look, we have Europe, Africa, India, China, Russia, Saudi, Arab. So what it tells one story, power. You see, these guys fancy themselves as growing economy better than Africa. So everybody's doing summit with Africa. When I was in foreign affairs advisor, those summits don't produce much work. I mean, it's good for the president to go there as if, well, say, this is Nigeria, we are in the game. But let nobody get deceived that any serious thing comes at this summit.
So you think that, if you say that, Dr. Amadi, if you say that, nobody should expect much from the president's attendance Saudi at the summit. What you're saying is that whatever this visit, this tour or travel is costing the president and the nation is a waste.
No, not really, because that's part of the diplomacy. That's part of the announcing that we are in the game. It's the president as chief organ under the Constitutional Act has to deal with these guys. But I'm saying, we talk about, looking for investment. Look, you don't look for investment, really. What they're doing in terms of preparing the country, policy, direction, determination, today's world is connected. They will find investors. If the investors find that investment makes sense here, they will come. And I'm saying that Saudi, the next day, Arab. See, whenever you see something Africa hyphenated, it means that there's somebody who is stronger than Africa.
Who's taking the lead?
Who thinks that, oh, well, China is in Africa. Why can't we be in Africa? So, I mean, sit back and say, what the big deal is about Saudi, apart from oil wealth and maybe better management of those oil wealth? What's big about Arab countries more than oil wealth and maybe better? So it's not a deal. It's just one of those. Africans are having summits everywhere. They don't really talk. I gave an example. We were in New Delhi many years ago for India-Africa Summit. Okay. I don't know what came out of that.
We have less than a minute to wrap this up, Dr. Amadi. So let's look at the bilateral opportunities for Nigeria. Nigeria Arab, Nigeria Saudi. How can the president take advantage of that?
Well,
it's a new day anyway, new administration.
He can take advantage. I mean, a couple of things. They talk about counterinsurgency, they talk about agriculture, they talk about infrastructure. We don't discount the Arab countries and Saudi totally. But the point is, I'm saying, look, you go there, don't say this is not the deal, but you can get some things bilateral. Good relationship is good for us. We've got a lot of cultural ties with Saudi. People are going on pilgrimage, which is necessary for cohesion. The president can further, make it stronger. By the way, Saudi, OPEC, strong member of the OPEC community, where Nigeria also needs to show it and maximize opportunities. So not a bad deal to go, but I'm saying, look, this is not the breakthrough point for anybody. This is still Saudi. It's still Arab country. None of these are technological giants. None of these people are going to, stimulate our economy. If you're talking about Taiwan, if you're talking about the East Asians, maybe there's a lot to learn from them. But the point remains, we have to look inward. We have to strategize. Investment will come if we get things working well. We don't need to shop around the world looking for investors.
Thank you, Dr. Sam Amadi. Well, let's Newsnight just wish President Bola Tinubu all the best as he embarks on this trip. Hopefully something comes out of it.
Absolutely.